Welcome to Fierce Conversations with Toby, the podcast where we dive deep into the art of overcoming. Here we share powerful stories that ignite healing and inspire profound transformations in your own journey. I'm Toby Dorr, and together we'll explore the resilience, courage, and fierce determination that turn life's challenges into stepping stones for growth. Let's begin this transformative journey together. Hi, welcome to Fierce Conversations with Toby. Today I have Rosalyn Rourke with me. And Rosalyn, I'm delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Yes, and Rosalyn is an author. She's also a psychotherapist, and she's got a lot of life experiences, I think, that she'll be able to share with us today. So let's go ahead and get started. One question I like to ask at the beginning, which really has no relevance to anything, is what's your favorite color? What do you think that says about you?
Right now, it's pink. This kind of pink, only,
Uh-huh.
only because it represents the new possibilities in my life and my passion, whereas
I love
before it
that.
would have been black.
Ah, I love that. I love pink too. Pink's my favorite color. Well, I like
Mhm.
orange and purple too, but
Mhm.
pink's my favorite. The funny thing is, I loved pink when I was a girl, and for some
Mhm.
reason, when I got to high school and I was a young adult, I hated pink. I told everybody I hated pink, and I think it's because it was too feminine.
Yeah.
But now, and then one day, about 10 years ago, one of my sisters said to me, "But Toby, you always loved pink." And I
Mhm.
said, "I did." And I went, "Oh, yeah, that's right." And
Mhm.
now it's my favorite color again. But it's funny how things change.
Yes, and were you aware, you might be, that colors go in and out of fashion? So, let's say you were looking for turquoise for a specific reason. There would be years you couldn't find it. And then another year, there'd be turquoise everywhere. And I think that affects us, even if we're not fashion conscious.
Right. Yeah, if we don't pay attention to it, but it's so much around us that you
Yeah.
kind of pick up on it. Maybe that's why I went away from pink
Well,
for a while.
also little girls in pink, and then you get to a different stage and you want to evolve outside of the little girl, and you don't want to have the barriers between girls and boys. You want to be you. And then
Yes.
I think it's very typical for girls to let go of pink for a while.
Yes, I think that makes sense. But gosh, it's such a power. You can get such a soft, sweet shade of
Mhm.
pink and such a bold, bright shade of pink, and it's just everything. I
And
love
I
it.
think with your coloring, I mean, yes, we're on video, but I think
Mhm.
pink would look great on you. And so
Yes, I
I
do
think
like to wear
even
bright
if
pink.
we're not good visually, as far as, determining what colors, we do have a kinesthetic sense of,
Mhm.
oh, I look better today, or I look all of a piece rather than this color is wearing me. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I could see that. I
Yeah.
could see that. So, let's see. Tell me about a time in your life where you reached a crossroads, and how did you decide which path to take, and where did it take you?
Oh my God. Shall I go the deepest place? So the first thing I thought,
Sure. I think deep is awesome.
all right, well, my daughter unexpectedly died at age 39.
Mm,
And as we talked about before we recorded, I live in Florida for half of the year. And I went through what would be considered the typical stages of grief. And bottom line is, I really kind of felt like my life was over with my daughter gone. I couldn't picture going on.
mhm.
And there was a moment when I looked out at the horizon. I was sitting on a log. The temperature was perfect. I was listening to the waves do their music. And it was so peaceful. And I looked out into the horizon, and without an ideology to back it up, without beliefs, I just had this feeling that Melissa was out there. And if
Mm,
I just walked out into the horizon and kept walking, I would be with her. And I didn't do anything. I noticed it was a suicidal idea. I never had an idea like that in my life, of
mhm,
consciously taking my life. I didn't decide not to do it. I just
mhm.
let the next moment be new.
Ah,
I felt my toes in the sand. I felt my heart beating. I felt my aliveness. And it wasn't actually a decision, Toby. I just let it pass. That thought, I didn't attach to it. I didn't make
mhm,
it real or scary. I noticed it. I let it be what it was, a serious suicidal idea. And oops, that, like,
mm,
oh, look, that's attractive.
mhm.
Sometimes I think we almost put too much emphasis on our minds and deciding, that sometimes
Yes.
life holds us and takes us to the next moment, especially if we stop thinking. Especially if we stop thinking. Because what if I was thinking, I said, oh my God, you're suicidal now. Should you do
Right.
something? Oh my God. Blah, 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 blah. What does this
Then it
mean?
becomes who you are, this
No,
suicidal person, when really that's not
it
it.
was just a thought that
Yeah.
happened, and it
And I
was
think the
accepted.
important part is that you acknowledge it, you recognize it's there, and then you just let it move on. Because I think when we tend to not acknowledge things, they stay there because they want you to acknowledge them, and they stay there and they get bigger and bolder and braver until you can't ignore them. And then maybe they're too big for you to handle. So,
Yes, and I think you're making such a huge point, Toby, because in what we don't acknowledge is how much energy it takes to push down or push away
oh,
feelings,
yes.
and they take away from our passion and our purpose and our possibility. Those are three new words that just come to me to describe how my life is different before Melissa died. Before Melissa died, I was just a psychotherapist. I was introverted. I was with my own friends, my family, and my clients. But I wouldn't be on a podcast. I wouldn't write a TEDx talk. I had no inner movement to be public, if you will, or to share any message.
Mhm.
But now I'm not doing it from here. It's coming from inside, like a push.
There's such a difference, you know? And this is crazy, but one of the things I've found is that if I pick up a pen and I write on paper, it comes from my heart. It's like they're connected. But when I sit at the computer keyboard and start typing, it comes from my head.
Wow.
And so I have to start with thoughts on paper. Now, I
Wow.
might not write a whole page, but I will definitely flesh out a thought on paper
Wow. Well,
before
you
I
know
put
what?
it into
Science has
computer.
backed that up. That for some reason, I don't remember the reason, but that science has proven that you're wired more closely to the pen and paper than you are to the
Yes.
computer.
So what I read is that the act of writing, of taking a pen and writing a character, awakens this area of your brain because it's kind of a creative act, the
Oh,
act
that's
of
it.
writing a
That's
letter.
it. That makes
Yeah,
so much
and when
sense.
you type, it's just rote patterns, you
Exactly.
know?
Now that makes sense. Yes, I love that.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
just think that's so beautiful, and when I was in prison, a family member sent me a journal, and I thought, "What will I do with this?" Well, I just started
Mhm.
writing, and I filled it up, and I filled up another, and I filled up another. I have a whole box of journals from prison, and I that was when I was at my lowest time ever, but I found myself through writing in those journals
Wow, a lot
because
of people
things
have.
come out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and now
Things come
you
out
have
you don't even put voice to, they just come, and you go, "Oh, yeah, there, that's how I'm feeling."
oh, Toby, it's so precious that you have those words because you and I are both a word people. We
Yes.
and the finding
Mhm.
in your memories distort things. So
Yes.
you'll have your exact words at these different moments. It was
Mhm.
breathtaking before you asked to be put on suicide watch. That whole
Mhm.
experience that you went through finding yourself, it was almost like a rebirth. It was,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
yeah,
It definitely was, and it changed my life. It
mm,
saved my life.
yes.
That between that and my mom not losing faith in me and coming to visit me every week,
I love
that's
your mom, even though I don't know her.
my
And
mom
you're
is
so
awesome, and
sweet.
her birthday was last week, and, she would have been 87, and she's been gone for, wow, almost 10 years, I
Is
think.
that
Maybe it
right?
is 10 years.
Oh.
Yeah. Boy, I miss her, but she's still here. She's a
And
part
you're
of me.
living the life she wanted you to
Yes.
come back to,
Yes.
and a new
Yeah.
life, yeah.
Mhm. It's just beautiful, and I think it's so important for us to have someone like that in our lives, but just as important, I think that especially for strong people, we picture ourselves as strong people, when someone comes along who wants to fill that role for us, who wants to nurture us and hold us and lift us up, we tend to push them away thinking we don't need it,
Mhm.
and I think the person who gives receives as much as the person they're giving to. So sometimes we have to remember that we need to let other people have the opportunity to fill you with grace because it benefits them too.
Yes, and receiving is just as important as giving, and we're
Yes.
not we're not brought up with that. We're not.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not. We want to be strong. We want to do it. I can do it on my own.
Mhm.
But,
Well, in
no.
this culture, no matter what our families teach us, and you got a heavy dose of perfectionism in your family and a need to help. When your dad got hurt in that accident, you were given a role and accepted a role and volunteered
Yes.
for a role.
Yes.
And that's how it
Mhm.
goes in families. But the larger culture also teaches us that, you know, to be independent and admire that rather than the
Yeah.
one who received and admire
Yeah.
that person. Yeah,
It's a gift to receive.
yeah.
It's a gift to the person giving, so we need to be open to that, and I
But
think a lot of
there's
times
one thing I want to add to that. I teach the Enneagram because it's an age. Have you ever heard of the Enneagram?
I've heard of it, but I don't think I know what it is. When you talk about it, maybe it'll come to me, but I
Well,
couldn't tell you right
if
off the
you
bat.
saw it, I think you might remember it because it's more than one of those personality cute tests, and I'm a this and I'm a that,
Mhm.
and you just go on with your life. It has an ancient connection and a spiritual connection. But there's one personality type that's the giver, the helper. And while we all admire that, that can be a compulsive cover up to not allowing your needs to be met
Mhm.
and not believing they can be met. So the only way you get is by giving. And that actually ends up killing you,
Ah,
kind of giving. So there are caveats to everything, right?
yes, there is. That's so true. That's pretty powerful. I love that. So, what role did fear or doubt play in your journey, and how did you overcome it?
Well, my book, and I'll hold it up if anybody wants
Yes,
to see
and
it,
I'll put a link to it in the show notes
but
too.
it shows, I can't hold it straight for the camera.
When wisdom arrives. Is
Yeah,
that
and
what it says?
you see these two people, a wisdom
Yes.
character and a child. And I told it through a fable, although there's a memoir attached and a Q&A at the end to show how the fable relates to our adult stories. But when you say about fear, excuse me, I judged my daughter because we had three generations of mothers who judged one daughter, picked one out of the two, and got afraid about their weight. But the weight was symbolic. And I
Mm,
knew it was wrong. I was already a psychotherapist. I
mhm,
could not stop it because it was generational. And a
mhm.
whole lot of work had to happen. Luckily, before my daughter died, we did enough ancestral work to really get to grace and love and admiration and respect, and the fear was gone. So my fear came out as judgment. I was
Mm,
afraid that when she got fat, I'd been an obese child and I'd been judged and bullied, judged by my mother because she was scared because she was obese and she didn't want to happen to me what happened to her. I did the
mhm.
same thing with my daughter. And how does it get resolved? What was your question? Fear
I
to me.
said, how did it, what role did fear or doubt play in your journey, and how did you overcome it?
Well, you know, this is going to sound crazy to you, maybe, or to your audience, but maybe not, because I sense you're a deeply spiritual person.
Mhm, mhm,
I did a lot of work in the world, psychotherapeutic work. We did ancestral work together. We did our own work separately, my daughter and I. And then we went to Ireland just on, not my daughter and I, another couple and I, and we met the greatest Irish mystic. Her name is Lorna Byrne. And it was very involved and evolved how we got to meet her. She has one book, if anybody wants to look it up. It's called Angels in My Hair. And it is the best of her books. And it speaks to her journey about how she was raised by angels. And
mm,
the angels, because she's in her 60s, and when she was a child, they would have taken her out of her family because she was seeing these angels, and they would have put
mhm.
her in the loony bin because they
Yeah.
did not understand what a learning disability was. She couldn't
Oh.
be taught in school because the nuns didn't understand learning
Mhm,
disabilities. So the angels said, don't tell anybody that you see us. Anyway, this woman, when we met her, she was so much simpler, Toby, than all the work I'd done. But we can't deny all the work we'd both done. But she
mhm,
just said, just reading us, she said,
mhm.
you, and I don't think she pointed her finger, but she was a mild mannered person. But I heard it as so loud, Toby, like almost like she was shouting, you
Mhm.
must stop it. Stop
Ah,
judging Melissa. And
wow.
she didn't talk about my other daughter. She scanned our bodies and she said, to me and to my husband, you're healthy now, but if you keep worrying about her, you will be sick.
Wow.
And after that, it was entirely changed. Melissa was changed. Melissa began seeing the angels. And you know what they said to her a few months before she died? And she was getting these downloads from angels all of a sudden about everyone. The angel said to her, "You will have no need for money, so stop charging and give away all of your work." And
Wow.
she did it. Nobody knew she was going to die. Nobody.
Ah,
So we've been through quite a journey, and that's a lot more than you were asking when you said fear. But that is, for me, the journey of fear turned into judgment, and letting the
mhm.
judgment go opened us to everything.
I love that. Yeah, my fear has been shame, which is easy to see why, because, I was plastered all over the newspaper headlines with the worst headlines. And it would have been so easy to let myself believe I was that person they wrote about in the newspapers. But I realized, well, it's strange because the thing that set me free was I couldn't figure out how to push away that shame because I couldn't get my hands around it. It wasn't a thing. And then I started envisioning it as a dragon, and I called it the shame dragon. And I could, pull out this sword and I could have a battle with this shame dragon and push him back out of the way. And that visualization is what helped me get through the shame,
Yeah, shame,
and
we have that in common because shame is in the book. I call it imagined unworthiness because
oh, yeah, I like that.
when we get to spirit, and that is because the difference between shame and guilt is you made a mistake, and shame is you are a mistake. It's much more
Oh,
a
yeah.
healing wound, and it's so that is pivotal to all my work. So I really appreciate what you did with the dragon, and I wonder if you were not in touch with imagined unworthiness even as a child, because
I think I was.
yeah.
Mhm.
And when you're a perfectionist, in your book, you talk a
Yes.
lot about being a perfectionist. And a perfectionist, why does someone have to be perfect? It's only because they feel not good enough.
Yes.
Otherwise, good enough is good enough. It doesn't need to be
Yes.
perfect, right?
Yes.
And then when you're a little girl and you want to be a helper and you can't fix your father's accident, you can't fix your mother's pain, and you want to help. That's the kind of thing that children don't understand. Of course, you can't do that.
Mhm.
And then we have either good or bad in our young brains. We don't have this is a complicated situation, la 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 la. We only have I'm bad because I can't fix this. You're either good or you're bad. You can't feel good.
Yes.
So that's how simple it is for all of us.
Mhm.
And just getting in touch with that imagined unworthiness
Mhm.
is the freedom
Yes.
that you have established, but with your
Mhm.
dragon, with how you turned around your life, why
Mhm.
you claimed it too. You claimed your worth. You had over and over again, you said, I'm not that woman, and I'm going to
Mhm.
live a different life. Nobody gave it to you. You had to claim, right?
That's true. That's true. I hadn't thought of it that way. I love that.
No, you're a big example. Matter of fact, I would like to invite you to an event that we're just putting together, which is about what happens when you claim your worth, even through death, even through the
Ah,
death of a child. And I know you've had two.
yes.
To have a bigger life than you had before
Mhm.
is a promise, a possibility that so many people who stay in grief, who stay in the stages of grief, they never get to experience what you and I have.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, that's true. I'd love to be in your event. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
We'll
we'll
have to
talk
talk
more
more
about
about
that
that.
later. Yeah,
That's
as it
definitely
evolves. Yeah.
So, was there a conversation that changed your perspective on who you are or what you could achieve?
Well, it was. let's see, conversation, that conversation in Ireland changed me. But did I have anyone who believed in me? I think I've had, it hasn't been one person. I mean, I do have a husband, and it's what he, it's kind of hard to describe. He didn't want me to write a book. Still would
Mhm,
rather this book not be out there because
mhm.
it's a very personal book and he's very private. But to have somebody support you, even when they don't agree with what you're going to do,
Oh, that's so important, isn't it?
it's easy.
Yes.
Like when I go to uh, pay for master classes, or if you join something, it's easy to be supported there. But it rings even more true and louder that he does everything within his power to not stand in my way, to
Mhm.
allow me the time, not allow because he's not in charge of me, but
Right.
grace.
Not begrudge you the time.
Yes, and to really be excited when the book
Mhm.
comes out and when other people love it or whatever, to show up. That means a lot. Showing
That's excellent.
rather than the words, the showing up
Mhm.
in life.
That is so true. If someone's just there for you. I tell you, when I first met my current husband, Chris, I had no intentions of getting married again. It wasn't on my list. And my youngest son was dying of cancer.
Yes, I
And I was,
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, one day I came down to the office and I was just so upset. And I was crying. And Chris said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Greg's not getting any better and I don't know how to fix it." And he said to me, "You can't fix anyone, Toby. You have to fix yourself first, and then you'll have something to give to others. But until you, when if you stay broken, you can't give anything to
Such
anyone else."
wise words, so beautiful.
Mhm.
And I think my husband never had those words, but allowing me the space to evolve,
Mhm.
not begrudging, as you say,
Yes.
because it wouldn't have taken much in the beginning to pull me back. And I
Mhm.
had friends who went crazy supporting me, and I've had others who begrudged me the spotlight or whatever it is they saw.
Yes.
And
I've had the same.
right,
Mhm.
and showing up. So it doesn't even take words or gifts. One person gave a
It's true.
party. It's not the party. It's her generosity of spirit
Yes. Mhm.
for the book and for that kind of thing. And when
Yeah.
mentors go that extra mile, they don't even have to say anything, but it's an open door. Let's talk about doors and gateways. How do we
Oh, yeah.
find those next doors? Sometimes it's a person, and if we look for it, sometimes it's life through a person.
I dropped my pen. I wanna write that down. I love that. So, let's look for doors.
Yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with perspective too, because, I've always said, especially when I was in prison, I couldn't control myself being in prison. I'm here and I'll get out someday, but I have no effect on that. I can't have anything to do with that. But what I can control is my perception of where I am. And so I started thinking about prison as this exclusive, barren spa where you just go to find yourself and there's
Oh, I
nothing to
love
distract
it.
you.
A retreat. You
A
had the
retreat.
perfect retreat.
Yes. I mean, I've said before, I had this beautiful gift of time because when we're out here, we don't have
Yeah.
24 hours a day to just sit and ponder ourselves in life. I mean, it was such a blessing. it was the hardest time in my life. I don't want to do it again. But at the same time, it was such a blessing.
Well, I was so struck that life gave you the particular people that held you up in prison, that saw your
Mhm.
leadership. Boy, were you ever a leader in that prison life. And
Yes.
some of those people never met anyone like you. And
Yes.
you will be forever in their hearts, not just as love, but as a template for
Mhm.
so much I couldn't even begin to name. I was so struck by that, Toby, and also the contrast. Somebody else could have focused on what you weren't getting from your family, but you were witnessing what happened with your inmates that was so
Yes.
touching.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes we get focused on who we want it from. Like, let's say I want this person to admire me or approve of me. And then we don't see the 10 other people who are giving us that, but we don't see it.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. That's true. It's been almost 20 years since the escape. It's coming on 19 years since the escape. So it's a while back. And a few months ago, I had a woman reach out to me on Facebook and say, Toby, you probably don't remember me, but did you ever name a dog after me like you said you would? And it was Hortense. She was one of my roommates for just a few weeks. And
Um,
I sent her a book and she's reading it and she said, I think I'm going to try to write a book. And so
ah,
I don't think we always know the lives we touch.
did you ever
And
name a dog after her?
I didn't, but now I have cats, so I've told her I'll name my next cat after her. And I even had it in my journal. I went back and looked, and I remember I wrote down, I told her I'm going to name my next dog Hortense. So that's so funny. But I think the lesson in that is don't hold back. Give and be you and give examples and lift other people up, because it might take 20 years before what you said reaches them, but it will at some point. So
Toby,
don't miss an opportunity.
yes, I agree. And Toby, do you have any suggestions for, because you've now met all kinds of people, even people
Mhm.
that would never come to my psychotherapy or my coaching or my Enneagram. You met people who would hold back, who wouldn't be you. You know how you
Mhm.
said be you.
Yes.
What advice do you have? What hand out to can you offer for people who say to themselves, well, what I say isn't that important. um, I'm afraid that it's not safe to say what I would like. um, Maybe I'll just wait and hold back. What can you say? Because I see a lot of
Here's
people like that.
Yeah. Yes. So here's what I believe. Every one of us has a story. And every one of us has some person out there who's waiting to hear our story the way we tell it. So there could be a dozen people who write books about a prison escape or about going to prison and coming out of prison, but they're not going to write it the same way I write it, or she writes it, or he writes it. Everything's going to be its own way, and then your story is meant for certain people out there to hear. And if you don't tell it because you think he's telling it and she's telling it, then you'll never reach the person that's waiting for your story.
So what if this person says, oh, I'm thinking of people who go to a group and then they're quiet. They don't want to speak up. And so what you said applies there. There's somebody in the group or somebody who listens to the replay needs to hear what they have to say.
Mhm.
What if they say to themselves, well, I talked last time or recently, maybe somebody else should talk now. This is another thing that I hear.
Like, how big are your groups? How many people? Is it 10 people, a handful of people? Is it hundreds
Less
of
than
people?
10 at a time.
Okay. So what if I would be tempted to say that everybody should speak something, and if they don't have something to say, then just tell us what your favorite color is, or tell us something safe, because I think that the fear, public speaking is the biggest fear there is in the world. And even when it's in a small group, I've known people who are afraid to speak up because
Yep.
those small groups are vulnerable. I mean, you're in a very vulnerable place. So maybe if you start with something safe, like your favorite color, or, I have this crazy thing where I think of letters of the alphabet as personalities. So, tell me a story about the letter B. What's her name and what does she wear? I mean, just like crazy stuff that
Mhm.
nobody would be afraid to answer. I don't know.
Mhm.
That's one idea I would have,
But you know
because I
what?
think
They
once
have
they
these
start.
gorgeous, deep things to say. My groups go very deep. These are not
Mhm.
new people coming into a new setting. They know everyone for years, and they
Mhm.
are still holding back. And I know what you said, something that is in their hearts. They want to be me, and they need a permission. Like, I think you gave your prison cellmates and the others permission more to be themselves by
Yes.
watching you. And I
Mhm.
can talk, they can watch me, they do watch me, but many still hold back.
Hmm. That's interesting. That's interesting. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Of course, your setting is a different kind of setting than,
It
just the
is.
two.
It is,
Yes.
but let me ask you this. What about the idea of waiting for someone else? What do you have to say about that? How does that work?
Waiting for someone
Waiting,
else.
like maybe somebody else will say it. Maybe somebody else will do it. Let somebody else do it. What do you say about that in life?
Maybe somebody else is waiting for you to say it so they can say what they think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you, Toby. That's great.
Yes. You're welcome. You're welcome. This has been a great conversation. Boy, I feel like we could talk forever. There's
We
so many
could.
things here
Me
to
too.
cover.
Mhm.
But I think we're going to end with one question, and that is, well, I'm going to give you two questions. Here's the first one. Looking back, what advice would you give yourself at the critical turning point in your life?
If you had only today for the rest of your life, how would you think, feel, and act?
Mhm.
That could have
Wow.
cut through the judgment. If I knew I was hurting my daughter, I was
Mhm.
trying to fix her for her future self. If
Mhm.
only today, I wouldn't be wasting silliness on that. Like your
Yes.
husband said, you can't fix anyone else. And there was
Yes.
nothing wrong with her. There was
Yes.
nothing
Yes.
wrong with her.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm really big into changing the stigma of having people face death. We're all
Mhm.
great about talking about life, but it's still a faux pas unless you're taking care of your money
Mhm.
for your future. If you go into a room and say, "Well, how's everyone feeling about death today?" Like,
Mhm.
people would
They'll
be
just freeze up. I think death is one of the most beautiful and exciting adventures that we face. And I didn't always feel that way,
no.
but can you I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. We have thoughts about what we think is going to happen, but I think it's going to be this beautiful, wonderful experience that's so grand that we think, why would I have ever feared this?
Mhm.
This is what I lived for, to get to this. And
Wonderful. Yeah.
it's tough because I don't think death is something we should fear. And I think dying can be beautiful. And I think helping someone else die is the best gift you can give.
Well, and most people think that life is suffering. There is a lot of suffering in life, everybody's life. And if death isn't beautiful because we don't know what it is, it's just our beliefs. Nobody knows because everybody's alive, even near death. We don't
Right.
know that they know,
It's a one-way road.
right? But what if death is the end of suffering? What if it's
Yeah.
nothing? And,
Then that would be peace,
and
you
even
know?
if it's not, it's part of life. It's not the opposite.
Yes,
Life doesn't mean anything if we don't compare it to death.
that's true. Oh, that's true. I hadn't even thought about that. But you're right. You're
It's just
right.
part of the life cycle. We don't say, "Oh, I hate winter. Oh my God, winter. Don't talk of winter. No, no, no,
Right.
no. I only
Mhm.
like summer or spring." No, we
Just
don't
get
do
through
that.
it.
It's
Right.
just
Right.
part of the cycle.
I love that. That's so interesting. I think we could do a whole podcast just
I
on
think
that.
maybe we should,
Yeah,
especially if I do
maybe we
this thing on death and welcoming
Yes,
death.
yes, I love that. I think hospice care is the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yes.
I would be really attracted to that field
Yeah, you'd
myself.
be great. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So, what word inspires you? Lend us with a word that inspires you that we can share with other people.
Possibility.
Oh,
It
that's so good.
it opens me up, especially when we're in a lot often into either or. Should I do this? Should I do that?
Mhm,
What if it's
mhm.
more? What if it's and? What if
Yes.
it's something we've not thought of?
Mhm.
Possibility opens me to life.
I love that. I love that. I think that's beautiful. Possibilities are always out there, even in the most dire circumstances. And if
Exactly.
we focus on the possibilities instead of the mess we're in at the moment, you can get through anything.
Absolutely. And it's the one thing we're missing when we're down on ourselves, whether it's shame or depression or anger or whatever you think happened to you.
Mhm.
Possibility is usually missing. So it can be an opener and a turnaround.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Roslyn. It's been so fun to have you on here, and I'm sure we will definitely stay in touch.
Yes, for sure.
I'm going to put links in the show note to your books and
Thank
to the
you.
book that you mentioned, so listeners will be able to find those if they're interested.
Wonderful. Thank you, Toby.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
Mm.
Thank you for tuning in to Fierce Conversations with Toby. Your support means the world, and I hope today's episode made a positive impact on you. To keep our conversations going, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. A 5-star rating, like, comment, or review helps tremendously in spreading our message. You can also support the show by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/fierce conversations. All members receive a downloadable gratitude journal and access to a private Facebook group. Plus, 10% of your subscription goes directly to donating my workbooks to women in prison. Finally, sharing this episode with your friends and family is a great way to amplify our mission. Fierce Conversations is created and hosted by me, Toby Dorr, with production by Number 3 Productions. The theme music, Grooving, composed by Lisa Plass, features Lisa on flute, Carolyn Parody on piano, and Tony Ventura on bass. Learn more at tobydor.com. Thanks for listening, and remember, escape your prison.